Okay, so let us start with the second lesson on the series, that is the data types in Python. Data types in Python, right? This is what I'm going to talk about right now. So in Python, when I talk about data types, you already by now know what data means, right? So the first category is numerical. So for example, in Python, you can store data in the form of numbers. Okay, now it could be integer. I'm not going into the very maths of what is a rational, irrational number, what is fractions, what are integers. I believe that you can do your homework about that. Integers, right? So 5, 6, 7, such are the examples of integers, right? All these are examples of integers. Now, when I talk about other type of numbers, they are floats, right? Something that has decimal into it, like it has this point and a value followed by it, 5.06, right? So something like this could be a float. The third category could be complex numbers. So when I talk about complex numbers are nothing but 5 plus 6j. Not many people are very comfortable with the complex numbers, and you need not worry about it. It's very task specific. When you need complex numbers, only then you use it. But else, I'm just covering the entire syllabus of whatever categories the data types are available in Python, right? It's more towards technical field, complex numbers, right? So the second data type that Python uses is boolean. When I talk about boolean, it is nothing but either true or false values. This is what boolean means. So whenever you have a type of data which means a value truth or false, say for example, if you are having data in which you want to save whether your person under consideration is a male or not, so you can use true if it's a male or false if it's female, or not a male. So this is how you can use boolean categories, right? The third category that Python holds is sequence. Sequence is a type of data in which you can store information. So the first sequence is string. What does it mean by string? String is all text, so all textual values are strings, right? So anything like that which you can read is a string. So you can store strings also in Python. And the next thing that you can store is a tuple. Now let me quickly make you understand what a tuple means. So tuple is nothing but a fixed sequence in which you store different values. It means it is immutable. This word immutable is commonly used whenever you when you get an error. Majorly when you're using tuples, you can end up having an error in Python which will say that this thing is immutable, or anything which means immutable means that it when it thing that the thing is created, it cannot be changed or altered later on. It cannot be modified. Like for example, say suppose if I make a tuple. What tuple means? It means a sequence of different things. Suppose 5, 6, 7, 8. I create this tuple, right? Now later on, suppose later on I want to edit it later on. So what happens is I can't edit it, right? Or add values to it. Say suppose if I wanted to add 9, so now it's not possible. Once you've created a tuple, it's immutable now. That's what tuple means. A type of a data, it's a type of a data storing value. Like tuples are used to shortly store value which won't be changed in future. The next thing that you have is a list. So list is very similar to tuple. The only thing that changes it can be modified, altered, it can be played around in future also. Suppose if I created a list 5, 6, 7 and 8, right? Now in future suppose if I have to edit it, say I want to add 9, so that's possible, it's quite possible. And say suppose if I want to delete 8 also, right? I want to delete something out of it, so it's quite possible. So suppose if I want to change 8 and place 9 over it, that can be done. I want to change 6 with 3, again want to change 3 back to 6. So this all things can be altered in future also. This is known as list, and it need not only comprise of numbers, it can also have text into it, maybe strings, that what we will call it now, string 1. Say it could have string 1, right? I can add whatever I want, say string 2. So this is what list, and also tuples can have that. It can have anything but in a sequence. That's what sequence data type is. The fourth data type is set. The fourth data type in Python is set, which you're already familiar with when you are learning probability statistics. So you already understand what set means. If you're not very comfortable understanding set, you can always brush up, since this video is not meant to clear your maths. But if you have doubts, I can definitely clear it out in comments. Like, I can elaborate in comments. So please do feel free to comment on it. For example, suppose if I add this 3555, so this is not allowed in sets, right? So when you execute it, this is what you will get in output, because 5 cannot be repeated twice, or any number or anything in a set, or any entity or element of a set comes only once, right? It is mutually exclusive. It can only be once, not twice, right? So that's another type when I'm talking about sets. The last type that Python allows you is dictionary. Obviously you can have customized data types, but these are the standard data types that I'm talking about, the built-in data types in Python. So fifth is dictionary. So for example, suppose if I have a hotel, I'm running a hotel, and I'm explaining you with the reverse psychology, like we are taking an example and then coming to what dictionary means. So suppose if I have a hotel and I have three guests, say I have guest 1, guest 2, guest 3. So instead of always using guest, I can use keywords as one. Let's for example keep 1 is equals to guest 1. This is how you will make your Python language explain that 2 means what. 2 means guest 2. This is not not in a correct syntax, don't worry, but I'm just explaining you. Actually, if you are thinking I'm writing a code, no, this is a wrong syntax to use, but I'm just explaining you. Say let 3 indicate guest 3. Okay, so what I mean over here is I need not always use the word guest 1 or guest 2, right? I can simply use 1 or 2, right, or 3 to represent them. So whenever I'll be calling 1, it means I'm calling my guest 1, right? Whenever I'm calling 2, it means I'm calling my guest 2. So this is very useful when you have to recall certain things and just by the keywords. So dictionary is nothing but it has a key linked to a value. So dictionary is nothing but a type of data set in which you have keys linked to values. So you can say it could be key 1, it could be value 1, right? Similarly, you can have key up to say n number, right, which will have value up to n number. It's all possible, right? This is what all about your dictionaries. Now let me come to the very climax of this this lecture: variable. What does a variable mean? So variable is anything that varies with time or can vary with time, right? It's not fixed or constant. So your data usually can be variable or non-variable. Like for example, the value of pi, for convenience sake, let's consider it to be 3.14 for convenience sake. It is a continuous data. It can never be changed, like irrespective of your time, location, condition, it's same. But whereas when I talk about other variables, like for example in the example of our hotel, guest 1, guest 2, guest 3 can always change. Maybe guest 1 is only there for one day, after that it will change with some other guest, right? So usually when you're dealing with Python language or any coding language, data usually varies. So we use variables to store this data. For example, we can always create variables. Now say for example I created a variable. I can store anything into it, any data can be stored into it, right? So variables are nothing but the thing used to store the data. Now when I talk about variables, they have a particular syntax which you have to keep in mind. The first point is it should always start with a letter, or I will say alphabet, okay, or it can also start with an underscore. These are the two things that you can start your variable name with. When you're naming a variable, you should always remember you can always use either alphabet or underscore. When I have to talk about its example, so say for example I can take a is a variable, I can say b is a variable, or I can say underscore a is a variable, underscore c is a variable, right? It cannot have space in between, can't have space in between. So that is the logic why we are using underscore to create space. So when you see I wrote this c is a variable, it becomes very clumsy or claustrophobic in there, you cannot read it exactly. So c is a variable, right? So this is how you're using underscores to give a variable name. The third important thing is exclusions, right? When I talk about exclusions, so what I mean about that is symbols like this or this or this, right? A question mark, a backslash, forward slash, right? An apostrophe, at the rate, hashtag, dollar, and many more such that basically all your special symbols, they cannot be considered as your they cannot be used in giving a variable name. So this was all about what are variables and what are data types in Python. Thank you for watching.